I'm Julie Whitney reporting for Across the Fence. October is the perfect time of year for a little bit of mystery. So today we're bringing you a whodunit about every Vermonter's favorite feline, the catamount. Keith Silva first reported the story in 2018. Since then, our YouTube page gets comments about this story almost every month from folks who claim to have seen the elusive visitor to the Green Mountain State. Here's Keith.
If you think you've seen a catamount in Vermont, you probably haven't. If you think you've seen a cougar or a mountain lion, well,
a little mystery is good in our lives.
Scientists call it Felis concolor, cat of one color. This feline may be one color, but it goes by many names: mountain lion, puma, panther, and cougar. And then there are the subspecies, like the eastern cougar, what's known in Vermont as a catamount. The easiest ways to spot a catamount nowadays is either at a University of Vermont sporting event or in a museum. The last confirmed catamount in Vermont resides at the Vermont Historical Society in Montpelier. It was killed by Alexander Crowell on Thanksgiving Day, 1881. Not only was this animal the last of its kind in Vermont, it was also one of the biggest.
They're large cats.
Jed Murdoch is a wildlife biologist and a professor in the Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources at UVM.
The largest catamount or cougar killed on record here in Vermont was 182.5 pounds. It was, in fact, the last one on record killed in Vermont in 1881 in, I think it was Barnard, Vermont. So a pretty good sized cat. I think from nose to tip of tail was about 7 feet. You know, this is a large carnivore, and they're very secretive, and they tend to be more solitary, unlike coyotes or wolves or some of the other carnivores found here in North America.
In January 2018, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service changed the status of the eastern cougar, or catamount, from endangered to extinct. The statement reads in part, "The best available scientific and commercial information shows no evidence of the existence of either a reproducing population or any individuals."
So if you're interested in getting some experience with endangered species, just want to get out.
As a teacher and scientist, Murdoch is often asked if there's still a chance catamounts could be roaming Vermont's wild places.
I guess if you think of it from like an evidence-based point of view, it's hard to really make that argument. Yes, there are lots of sightings that come through, and the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department does a great job at investigating, I think, all of those sightings. But there really isn't a lot of hard evidence, and given the fact that we've got lots of roads that crisscross through Vermont, we've got people out in the wilderness, especially during deer hunting times. We've got lots of trail cams out, lots of ways of monitoring the environment remotely. It would be surprising if they were here and we didn't detect them. Now, I have to say that as soon as I make the statement that the catamounts are not here, one will pop up tomorrow, you know, in the news. There's always a chance. There's some uncertainty.
This is a needle within a needle within a needle in a big haystack.
Mike Kessler is an expert tracker and longtime instructor at UVM. Following him through the woods is an education.
Ooh, I see it. Look at this right here. You can see there's a nice large heel pad print here.
One of the best locations Kessler's found for tracking in Vermont is the Jericho Research Forest. Running through the 485 acres that encompass this property is the Millbrook Watershed, which, according to Kessler, federal biologists consider the highest value wildlife corridor in the Northeast. Kessler's tracked all kinds of animals through these woods, including large cats.
Now I have to turn and slink this way. And I'm thinking, because when toes are poked through, they have definition that's clear like that. That's usually an indication there's more time standing in this track.
That's a cougar track, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, that has no nails anywhere in there. Not a dog, not a bear. Now, a huge dog is not going to move this stealthy. The nails are going to be out. And so it's a preponderance of evidence. It's circumstantial, but we just keep building the case until we find one that's absolutely conclusive. And so, in other words, it's like Would I spend the rest of the day following this one? Sure. Yeah, I would invest my time and energy on this one as opposed to others that are like, oh yeah, it could be, but not sure. But when you add all this up, it's yeah, this is what they say, makes sense in the big picture and in the little picture. So we run with it. Over here.
Not only has Kessler tracked a big cat here in Jericho, he has his own big cat, tail to tail. In 2015, Kessler's longtime tracking companion, a corgi named Lucy, died. Kessler figures he and Lucy took over 10,000 walks together, many of them in this area, which is why he chose to bury Lucy in the Jericho Research Forest. 7 months after Lucy's death, Kessler says he got an urge to visit her grave.
The night before, she'd been dug up. I found her there cached under debris, something that had a 4-foot-long reach. She was down over 2.5 feet under a layer of clay, so there was plenty good tracks there with clay. There was an animal whose rear feet were 6 feet behind the hole. Dug her up, left her there, and there were just mountain lion tracks all over there.
As Kessler further investigated the site, he confirmed what he suspected. It wasn't a bear or a bobcat that had dug up Lucy. It was a cat, a big one.
Physics gets involved too, not just in making the tracks, which is so you have a force through a form. You need pounds per square inch and you need compaction on the soil. But in digging up a grave, the amount of force that had to be generated, aside from the prints that it left in the clay there, but just the force alone to dig through clay down over 2 feet, there has to be equal and opposite force in the rear feet anchoring it. So you could see in there how hard that cat was digging and how far that dirt was spread, including Lucy's hair a little bit when it got to it. So those rear feet were anchored for a while there. So it was very easy to see where the rear feet were. The rear feet were that far apart and they were 6 feet behind the hole. So that's not a bobcat again. It's not a bobcat, and it wasn't a bear, because the bear have their claws out, and their anatomy is totally different than the anatomy of a mountain lion.
A mountain lion in Vermont. But how did it get here? And what was it doing in Jericho? Kessler has a theory. About the time he discovered Lucy's disinterred remains, a large interagency drill was taking place about 5 miles northeast at the Camp Ethan Allen training site. The exercise was teaching emergency responders what to do after a simulated earthquake.
It makes sense that if an animal was coming through, it could very well be in there, and if it is in there and that type of activity kicks off, it's going to get pushed out one way or the other. It's going to go up Millbrook or down Millbrook, and appears to have come down. And on its way down, it would have ended up in the corridor where I buried Lucy. And so from a practical point of view, it's, yeah, you put it all together, it's like, I guess you could call it a perfect tracking storm.
After the discovery, Kessler reburied Lucy's remains in another location. When he returned home, he did something unconsciously that would reinforce what he already knew about the presence of big cats in Vermont.
I had smelled so bad, I had to just throw away all my clothes, and I threw the rake and the shovel up on top of the wood pile, just because I didn't want to deal with them.
About a month later, Kessler awoke in the middle of the night to an odd sound.
It was like the weirdest owl sound I'd ever heard. And then all of a sudden, I hear the sound over there. And I was like, oh, this must be an owl, because nothing else would move that quick and that silently. It had to have flown down there.
Kessler has a recording of what he heard that night, what he calls a cat bark. But that wasn't all he heard.
Then all of a sudden I heard a huge stick break. When I heard that stick break, I went right to it. And to my utter surprise was a mountain lion. And we were only 15 yards apart, and there was nothing between us. And it was a while. We were there, this whole thing was about 15 minutes. And standing in that one place under some pine trees, it left really good tracks there too. That mountain lion had come to my house, attracted to my wood pile. It was standing on its rear legs and I didn't understand why. And then I looked on top of the wood pile and there was the rake and the shovel. I totally forgot about that.
Kessler's story and his tracking expertise gives credence to the presence of cougars in Vermont. If so, it's likely to be a subspecies, the western cougar, and not the eastern cougar or catamount. Like many humans who visit Vermont, these western cougars are probably just passing through, tourists. But what would it mean if one decided to stay? Maybe brought a friend. Could Vermont once again become cat country?
The start of a population is always a pair of dispersing individuals, right? So, you know, there's the possibility that more than one could end up here and a population could get started. But, you know, you've also got this issue of social carrying capacity. Are people here in Vermont willing to accept, you know, a large felid, a large carnivore in the landscape? And we made it pretty clear many years ago in the 1800s, really, that we did not want them around. Both wolves and catamounts were driven to extinction through bounties and other means. Maybe times have changed. I would be thrilled to know that catamounts are here. They're such powerful symbols of wilderness, and to me, knowing that the landscape is in enough of a natural state to be able to support cougars is something that I would hold great value towards.
Because Vermont lacks large open areas like those out west, Murdoch tempers his enthusiasm for the possible return of big cats to the Green Mountains. Kessler, on the other hand, embraces the mystery.
Now what am I going to do? And heck, if you're a tracker, you're fueled by mystery. It drives you to get right down on your hands and knees and get dirty and follow things and follow them a long time and look at details that other people would think are silly. And because that's very tactile, that's tangible, that's real. But what drives you to do that is the mystery, the love of the mystery, and you never solve the whole mystery.
Whether there are cougars in Vermont or not, or if they're only passing through, perhaps it's good there's still a little mystery about that.
Thanks, Keith. That's our show for today. If you're out this weekend leaf peeping, keep your eyes open, and who knows, maybe you'll have your own catamount tale to tell. Have a great weekend.